Welcome. We are super excited that you have joined us this evening for this virtual community workshop. We are expecting a great group this evening, and we have a great team here to work through this content. I'm just going to give it another 30 seconds or so before we officially jump in. But I'll give those of you who are already here just a little preview of how this is going to go. We have a great agenda for the evening. We're going to ask you a lot of different questions. So we have different sections of poll questions throughout the webinar. And then we also have information sharing. We have a couple little mini presentations, and we even have a fun mapping exercise. You'll get to place points on a map. So it's going to be super interactive, and we're really excited to have everyone here and excited and willing to provide some input on reusable foodware and its potential in the city of Ann Arbor. So I think that we are good to go ahead and get started. So I will officially welcome everyone again. We're just so glad to have the opportunity to share this idea with you and to spend some time getting your input on the possibility of a reusable foodware system to serve the city of Ann Arbor. I'd like to let you all know that we have a great team on the phone, or on the Zoom, I guess is what we call it these days. We have the Sean Reynolds representing A20 for the city of Ann Arbor. We have Yusuf Huamed and Sam McMullen from zerowaste.org. We have Alex Danovich from Recycle Ann Arbor. We have myself, Autumn Buford, and Ziyu Ren from Perpetual. And we have Catherine Youngblood from the University of Georgia, who is with the Circularity Informatics Lab there. We have a few team members who will be joining us virtually. You'll hear from them shortly. And I think without further ado, we should go ahead and get started. So we're going to be taking about an hour this evening. And a lot of the hour is going to be you telling us what you think. And just a little bit of it is going to be us giving you some ideas and things to react to. So in the spirit of that, we're actually going to go ahead and jump right into our first, and Autumn, if you can bump the slides ahead. Our first set of poll questions. So I know we're just jumping in cold here, but we're really excited to just, before we've told you anything about anything, we want to get some input from you on these first, I think we have 6 questions. So I'm going to play just a little bit of lovely background music. So go ahead, and you should have had a poll set jump up on your screen in front of you. It says initial question set. So this is your chance to start the process of telling us how you feel and what you are excited to talk about tonight. And I promise the music is coming soon. There we go.
Ellie? Is it, I don't understand who Perpetual is. If you could kind of, I don't know, maybe you're going to do that, but I don't know who Perpetual is, what Perpetual is.
You bet. So this is just, we're pretending that you had just walked into the room and no one had explained anything to you yet. And so these first few questions are before we've said anything at all. So at some point, very soon, we will tell you a little bit about what's going on here and who's here. But this is the before you know anything, we're asking you questions. So thanks for being with us, and I promise everything will become clear. But thank you for
that's totally fair. Thank you.
You bet. So I see we're getting some good responses here. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties on our music. So we'll work on the background music, but for now you can just experience the zen of the sound of silence while you think about your answers to these questions. So thanks all who've just jumped in. If we do have a few folks joining us late, you should see some questions pop up on your screen. This is our sort of opening set of questions. We've got 6 questions that we're just looking for your input on. And we'll be doing lots of explaining and going through more details shortly, but this is the kind of just coming in cold, giving us a few quick reactions before we start talking to you about other ideas related to reusable foodware. So we'll give it another minute or two, and then we'll be, oops. Did we lose the polls? No, the poll is still up. We don't have the slides. So Autumn, I think that's fine. But when you get a chance, we'll put the slides back up. If you're still working on the questions, carry on. And it looks like everything should still be saved. You can just keep going on the questions. I know we're all good at Zoom, but also we're all still learning about Zoom. I think that's where we are in the Zoom journey. Zoom is full of mysteries, especially when it comes to playing music, apparently. Okay, I think we are about ready to move on. If you're still thinking about pressing submit on your questions, go ahead and do so. This would be better with music. Apologies. We're learning. Okay. I think we are ready to jump into the next activity. So thank you for taking a few minutes to fill out our first set of 6 questions. There's going to be a couple little places throughout this webinar where we ask you to give us questions, and then we're also going to, intersperse that with more information about who we are and what's going on. I know we had a question about who is Perpetual. And in fact, I don't know if you were on for sort of, I introduced, there's a whole team of folks that are working on this project together, including the City of Ann Arbor, zerowaste.org, and Recycle Ann Arbor. Perpetual is a nonprofit that works on partnering with cities to design and implement reusable foodware systems. So we work with a handful of different cities across the US on projects like this, working to get community input to design reuse systems. I imagine the other organizations are familiar, the City of Ann Arbor, Recycle Ann Arbor, and zerowaste.org is a zero waste focused nonprofit that also does a lot of work on the ground in Ann Arbor. So that's a little bit of the who. And Autumn, if you're able to go to the next slide, I think that will jump a bit more into the what of this conversation. So this is a chance to hear from our colleague Dagny about what is reuse.
My name is Dagny Tucker. So happy to be with you here today, and so happy that you were able to come and were interested to join our virtual participatory design workshop. I really appreciate that you went through these initial questions without a ton of context. I would love to fill in some of the gaps about what we're up to with this workshop today for you. So Perpetual is a nonprofit organization that specializes in bringing the expertise and skills to communities to explore the possibility, and if the community itself is interested, help them to design and implement full-scale reusable foodware systems. Part of that process is doing a big design with you to make sure that we understand what are the big choices and considerations that would make a system like this work for you either better or disincentivize you to use it or make it very convenient or inconvenient. So today's workshop is designed to ask some questions that will help us make the best decisions we can make to design the best system for your community specifically. So first, I want to just give you a little bit of the flavor of how these systems currently work. There are many of them all over the world. So I'm just going to share my screen and we can take a look at some quick examples that are in this video. And then I'll talk through a little bit more in depth how these systems might look or feel or work in your community. So here we go. And voila.
Imagine getting a burger, a pizza, or a salad and being able to return the packaging to any restaurant, supermarket, or public collection point for it to be cleaned and reused. Imagine buying a drink or a detergent and returning the empty bottle to any supermarket or drugstore for it to be cleaned, refilled, and reused. Imagine shopping online, receiving a parcel, and then reusing or returning the packaging to a parcel shop or mailbox. This is what we call reuse systems. This is the future of packaging, and actually, it is already here.
Indeed, it is. It is already here. We are seeing systems like this in North America, Europe, Asia, all over the world, in fact. And we would very much like to see if we can bring one of these systems to you and your community.
Imagine getting a burger.
I'm trying not to play that again. So how do these systems work? So these systems are designed so that the reusable item, in this case, foodware, is already at the place of business that you might need it. So you're walking down the street and you either see some indication in a store window or as you go in that they carry and have reusable items available for you. Generally, the process is that you would then check out this item, and that can happen in a lot of different ways. So some of these services work with an app, as you can see in this photograph on the left. Some of them work with just the scan of a QR code. Maybe you don't have to use the app. Some couple with a credit card. So there's a lot of different ways that we can think about designing the system. And some of the questions you'll see coming up ask some really specific things about, do you like apps? Do you not? Other things that will help us design the right way to have this service work in your community. After you've checked out your item, you're free to leave. Off you go. Enjoy your food or drink, park, at your office, whatever it might be. And generally you have somewhere between 3 to 5 to 7, maybe a little longer, depending on the system, to return your item to any convenient drop-off bins. There are some situations where perhaps it would be possible to have co-collection with recycling. Oftentimes there are public return bins on the street side. Usually there are return bins also in every business that provides returnable containers. So the idea is to make it extremely convenient and easy to use for you. And again, many of the questions that are going to be followed after this part of the presentation will be distinctly asking about how it might be easy for you to drop off your container. After that, you're finished, but on the back end, the containers are collected. They are transported to a washing facility where they're washed and sanitized following food code, FDA, all the types of regulatory agencies that oversee these things to make sure they're crystal clean before they are then repacked and redistributed back to the businesses. For the businesses, usually the cost is about the same amount that it would be for the single-use disposable they're using. So businesses don't pay more for this service. And for you as a consumer, as long as you're returning the item, the service is all free. So I hope that helped you all understand a little bit more about how these systems work and how they might work for your community. I'm sure my colleagues will be here to answer questions. If you have further questions after the presentation and workshop portion are over. Okay, I'll see you next time.
Okay. So that gives you a little bit of an overview of how reuse systems can work. And this would be a great moment if anyone has any clarifying questions, if there was something that didn't quite make sense to you about how Dagny explained it and what, you know, the idea of how the system can work. Obviously, we want to emphasize that we're not proposing a specific system here. It's more the concept of a system that then Ann Arbor, you know, the community and the businesses of Ann Arbor can figure out which are the specific decisions, you know, which on this screen, for example, which types of cups would you want to use? Which type of checkout system is going to work best? Where should return collection bins be? These are all decisions that need to be made specifically in the context of Ann Arbor, but just sort of at this overarching conceptual level, cup as a service. Does anyone have any clarifying questions or things that they'd like to ask about at this stage, just to help you feel like you have enough context, because we're going to ask you some more specific questions now about what would work for you or not, or not work as well. All right, I see we have one question about a time frame to return. That is also a design decision that can be made at the community level. I will say we want to give people enough time to return things that it's convenient, but the longer people hold on to things, the more inventory you need in the system. So it starts to be a trade-off on cost and environmental impact to have a lot of stuff versus having people return stuff faster. So it's interesting to think about, like, what is the right level, both from a behavioral perspective, how long people need to return something, and then in the system, how do you balance that against the needs of the system? She mentioned days. So I think she said 3 days, 7 days, 10 days. There's a range of things. Different systems today have a real range of different timeframes that they ask for things back. So hopefully that answered that question. Feel free to put a follow-up in the chat if that wasn't clear. Next question is, what does would economies of scale help make it cheaper? Love this question. So this is a really key point. And part of the reason we're thinking about this as a citywide program is because if you want each use to be about the same price as disposables, you need to do a lot of volume. This system requires washing equipment, it requires trucks to move things around, it requires return bins. So there's a fair amount of kind of infrastructure that needs to be put in place. The more you use it, then the lower the cost to have the system operate over time. And so there's absolutely a concept here, which is if you can do it at a certain scale and the faster you can get to scale, the more affordable it is. And you'll hear more about this when we talk about environmental impacts, but it also that corresponds to the lower the environmental impact is for wash as well. So that's a really important point. And then the next question here, is it possible to do this without economy of scale? Is there a minimum number of participants? Probably there is a minimum number of participants. I wouldn't say I have that number for you today. I think that really what we are looking for is how do you create a really immersive experience of reuse so that everywhere you go, you have the option to choose a reusable, and anytime you're on your way to somewhere, you have the option to return it. That creating that ecosystem is really important to having kind of reuse operate maximally. So I hope those are helpful. Okay, one more question, and then I'm going to throw some questions back at you all. So this last question here is, what have we learned from reuse of shopping bags at grocery stores that might be helpful? Love this question. I would say a key difference in the bring your own system and the system that we're proposing is that this model, this sort of cup as a service model, is really trying to take the burden off the individual user. So it's not remember to bring your blank. It's you don't have to remember to bring it because the business already has it. The reusable is there waiting for you. You use it and then you return it when you're done. And so it really tries to align as much as possible with existing habits that we have, and it doesn't rely on us creating new habits. Because as you say, it is hard to create new habits. And so this intends to really think about that and not ask a lot from people, and create the system to support the correct behavior, create the system to support the behavior we want, not ask people to adapt their behavior to a system that doesn't work very well. All right, so thank you for those questions. If people have other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And while you're answering our questions. I'll respond as best I can in the chat, or others from the team. We have lots of good resources for you here if you have other questions. So we're going to go to the next set of questions for you. And you should see that pop up on your screen shortly. So this is a longer set of questions, but bear with us. Just so that you know, all of this data is actually being collected and actually will help design the system. So this really matters. We appreciate you taking it seriously and being thoughtful about it. I will not talk at you while you do this. I'm afraid we probably won't have music for you, but embrace the peace and the clarity of this time, and go ahead and get started on these questions, and we'll keep an eye on how many people have participated, and we'll move on when it seems like most people are done. And if you do have additional questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll address those in the chat, so we're not too distracting chatting over your question answering. I'm just going to pipe in here with some encouragement. I see some folks have completed the questions. If you haven't completed, keep on going. We'll give you a few more minutes. I would hum or sing to you, but that would make it worse. So we'll just stick with the silence for now. And thanks for bearing with us. And thanks so much for your input. Carry on. Okay, it looks like we are just about there. Thank you. I promise that was the longest set of questions we're going to have you do, but I hope that the questions made sense now that we've provided a little bit more detail on this general model and concept. And thank you so much for your input. If there's one or two more of you finishing up, feel free. Our next activity is going to be a super fun exercise in telling us where you think different things should happen in the system. So Autumn, once you see everyone has signed in, I think we are good. Fabulous. Great. Next, we are going to have you identify on a map 3 locations that you go to regularly. So part of what we think about when we think about how to set up the collection infrastructure for a system like this, there's different options. You might have noticed in the questions. And actually, we can put the URL in the chat. I just saw that was a question that came up. This is an activity that you're going to do directly in Zoom. So you won't need a URL actually, unless you prefer to do it on your phone. But I'm going to walk you through how this is going to work. And you don't need to hop into the URL just yet. So what I want you to think about is, where is a place that you go to regularly, maybe at least once a week, or even every, a couple times a week. One of the ways we want to think about system design is that it's always on your way to somewhere to drop something off. So these are places that you're passing by regularly. It's part of your daily route. I've heard people use the term habit trails, which I don't know how I feel about that word, but it's a good descriptive word about where are the places you're often going. So we're going to collect that input from you on a map, and we're going to walk you through what it looks like to do that on the map, and then we'll open up the map for you to go in and put your own points in there. So this is embedded within Zoom. So when we press go, you're going to have, and Autumn, you can go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. You'll see this thing pop up, this little window that says you're invited to collaborate using a Zoom app called Padlet, and you'll press the blue button that says join. So it won't take you to the browser. It'll keep you right here with all of us in the Zoom screen, but it will become a dynamic screen with a map on it. And it'll look kind of like what you see under step 2 here. You'll see a map of Ann Arbor. And you'll see where this red circle is down in the bottom right-hand corner. There's a plus sign. You're going to press that plus sign, and that is how you're going to place your pins. So once you press the plus sign, it'll pop up a little window here. It'll say you have 2 options for how to pick a location. You can either search by the name, that's option 1, or you can drag and drop and actually just place a pin on the map using your cursor. If you would like to pick a location using the name, you just start to type the name location there. In our example here, we put in the word whole. That gives you the option of Whole Foods Market. There's apparently a number of Whole Foods Markets you could go to. You click the one that you want. You actually just select it from the list that pops up. Or alternatively, if you're dragging and dropping, you drag and drop, and then when you press click, it'll bring up, as you can see here, what does it say? What are you pinning? And it'll give you a bunch of different options for what you think you're pinning. We recommend for this exercise that you pick the very bottom one, which is going to be the coordinates, the latitude and longitude, unless you were sort of eyeballing the Whole Foods and you really are just trying to tell us Whole Foods, in which case, go ahead and press the Whole Foods as it shows up on your click map. So once you've pressed either the name and location or the latitude and longitude, you'll get this window that looks kind of white. It has these hexagons on it. You can ignore those. If you wish to type a note, you can. It's totally optional. Or you can skip that and you can just press the pink button that says publish. And that's all you need to do. You'll notice that there's a color choice. All colors are welcome. We don't have a particular feeling about color. So whatever color pops up for you is fine. If you wish to choose a color, go for it, but that's not essential. So that's what's going to happen. If you have questions as we're doing this, obviously feel free to unmute and ask for help, or put it in the chat and we'll make sure that everyone figures out how this is done. I'm pretty sure it's easy. Now that I've said that, it may not be, but we've tested it a few times, and I'm pretty sure that this is going to feel not too hard if you could follow these different click steps that we've walked through here. So now you'll see Padlet inviting you to join, so you can go ahead and press join. And we're asking you to place 3 points. So think of 3 places that you go regularly and mark those on the map for us. And again, we don't have any music to play while you're doing it, but that just gives you good, clear thinking time to figure out where on the map you'd like to go. You should, on your screen, have the ability to zoom in and out. So right now I'm watching Autumn's screen and how it's moving around, but once you click join, you'll be in your own screen and you'll be able to move around, find where you want to go, and you'll be able to place points. So I'm hoping so far so good. Please speak up if you need any technical assistance.
I don't see a join button. I see the plus, but when I click on the plus sign, I'm not able to do anything.
So look in the upper right-hand corner, there's a kind of a blue box that says Autumn Buford invited you, and it says Padlet, and then there's a blue join button in the upper right-hand. Nope, you're not seeing that? Did you press that already? Or are you, let's see.
Yeah, I have an iPad too. I don't see anything. No
Oh,
join.
There's no join on the iPad. Well, I think what might work, Ziyu, do you have any suggestions? I know this is the tool that you are more familiar with.
I just sent a link in the chat, so maybe you could just click the link and then do the same thing.
Yeah, it may not
So-
work. The embedded Zoom may not quite work. Oh,
And
it's underneath the faces. That's also possible. You might need to move the photo, sorry, like the video line, but it may be that the iPad is just different. So
Yeah.
iPad folks, is it working to click on the link?
there's
us
a
know if
link in the
not.
chat and there's instructions in the chat as well.
Yeah. Right. I'm not hearing that it's not working, so I hope that means that it is. I could definitely see lots of points appearing on the map, so that's very cool. It's fun
Yeah,
to
on the
see.
mobile device, the link does work. So
Oh, good.
using the link, because.
So the link is better. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us know.
It's
It's good to have options.
Did you say there was a place to type in a place like Arbor Farms?
Yeah, so when you click on the plus sign, it should say option 1 search or option 2 drag and drop. And so under search, there's a text
That
box.
came up
So
this
that-
time, yes,
You
okay,
see it? Okay.
yes.
All right, I see Carrie saying we clicked the link, but someone else is in control of the map. So if you're not in Padlet, then yeah, what I'm seeing on my screen is someone else's map. But once you're in Padlet, either through the link or through join, you should have control of the map. So maybe you could try exiting out. All right, Joyce, thank you for telling us that it's not working for you, and we will definitely put down Whole Foods on Eisenhower. If you have 2 other spots, let us know, and we'll, oh, thank you, Sam. Yeah, Joyce, just let Sam know and he'll map them for you. Thank you, Sam. If anyone else needs someone to just describe it for you, we've got a good team here supporting, so let us know. And you get 3. So feel free to drop 3 ideas in here. Thanks, folks. I think we might get like a bunch of votes for the Whole Foods. Our whole team is putting that on the map now. I hope that it is working for most folks. It looks like we do have a few that need the extra support, but I'm glad that we are capturing most of the other dots directly. So I'm thinking it feels like people have mostly figured this out and we are ready to move on. So if you need another second, let us know. Otherwise, I hope that was fun. Maybe it was a little bit frustrating, but hopefully it was fun. And I certainly am enjoying, there's a very dispersed set of points on this map. So that tells us a lot actually just right here that we have a group of 30 people and we have a lot of different spots where everyone's going all the time. So this is super helpful. We have a paper version of this that we did at the in-person workshops that we'll be able to kind of layer this on top of. So it's going to be very helpful to be able to kind of put all the data points together and see where we have convergence and where we have divergence. All right, so if you have more points to map, suggest that you put them in the chat. And in the meantime, Autumn, when you have a chance, I would like to introduce Catherine Youngblood. I know I mentioned her at the beginning. She is, well, Catherine, why don't you give your own intro, but she's one of the wonderful team members who's been helping with different types of data and research to enable this project. So Catherine, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ellie. Hi, everybody. So my name is Catherine. I work at the Circularity Informatics Lab at the University of Georgia, and we are working on a circularity assessment protocol in Ann Arbor to kind of help support some of the work that Perpetual and the community are doing. So CAP, which we call it for short, is a method that we developed to sort of give a snapshot of what a circular economy might look like at a community level. Circular economy, a really buzzy concept in the plastic pollution space right now, basically meaning designing with the end of life in mind so that we reduce the need for creating new products by being able to reuse things and being able to use them in new products as well. So the CAP really gives a snapshot across these several different spokes, and we are collecting both quantitative and qualitative data. So it's intended to be a really holistic way of looking at what a circular economy could look like in a community and identifying opportunities as well. You can go to the next slide. I will mention that we've done this now in about 50 cities in 13 different countries. So also some good comparative data and some learnings across the different cities as well. But one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is the litter data from Ann Arbor. This is always something that is really interesting because it's sort of where the circular economy is not working right now and can help identify some opportunities. So we had some randomly selected areas throughout Ann Arbor where we collected litter data in random transects, and we found on average about 49 litter items in each 100-meter square transect. So that's about the length of a city block. Comparatively, in Galveston, another city we're working in with Perpetual, it was about 112 items. But this is very similar to Minneapolis. I think we had about 60 litter items per transect there. So we're seeing a little bit of difference there already, but as far as what those items were, so cigarettes are always at the top of the list. Everywhere in the world we do these projects, but interestingly, foam and plastic cups and lids were pretty high on the list in Ann Arbor. We don't always see those in the top 10 litter items identified. You'll note in the material breakdown as well, tobacco products, again, largely driven by cigarette butts, and plastic fragments was the second largest category. But plastic food packaging is really kind of the largest, most actionable category. Obviously, there's already a lot of anti-litter campaigns around cigarette butts, but I think it's interesting that plastic food packaging, which is related to what we're talking about here today, was such a high percentage of the litter that we found in Ann Arbor as well. You can go to the next slide. And then, so in addition to the surveys of what's not currently working in the system, we're also looking at what sort of alternatives were available in restaurants and stores. So this was both surveys we conducted of what kind of to-go materials are currently being used in restaurants in Ann Arbor, as well as what kind of alternatives are currently available in the home and personal care product aisles in grocery stores and other convenience stores in Ann Arbor. So I'll talk about restaurants quickly first. So quite a bit of compostable packaging was being used. We did these surveys back in May. And so we were seeing quite a bit of compostable packaging, although also lots of hard plastic and foam, but quite a bit of effort already in trying to switch to what is considered a more sustainable product with compostables. But obviously the compostable packaging has lots of challenges with actually being able to work with the infrastructure in place. So it generally costs more money for businesses to purchase these compostables. They're not always really easy to actually process on the infrastructure side of things. Similarly, so for the products we were actually seeing in stores that were available to consumers, most of those were compostables. Some were also alternative materials like wood or metal, and then some were intended for reuse or refill, but a lot of it was, again, emphasized on that compostable aspect, which is another reason that exploring reuse in Ann Arbor is really exciting. There's already a lot of energy around alternatives, but a lot of it's focused on compostables. And in general, those were quite a bit more expensive compared to plastic and styrofoam. Another reason the cost comparison and potential for cost compatibility that they were talking about with reuse is exciting here. So that's a lot of data in a very short amount of time. We're hoping to continue to supplement this with some additional qualitative interviews to really understand some of the factors in the community driving some of these things, and hopefully have a report in the next couple months that'll kind of go through some of these findings and opportunities.
Thank you, Catherine. It is a lot of data, and I know it's just a tiny piece of the data that you have. Does anyone have any questions for Catherine about the data that she shared and about kind of what the CAP is and what it's for? I'm not seeing anything pop up right away.
Awesome. I will just add one of our goals as well is to be able to resurvey these litter sites after we implement a reuse system in Ann Arbor, and that's going to be a really exciting data point. There's not a lot of good data on how environmental impacts are impacted by some of these projects, so the before and after data is very exciting here. So I'm happy to be working in Ann Arbor.
Thanks, Catherine. Wonderful. Well, I hope that was interesting and, shared a bit more context about sort of the how, or not the how maybe, but the why and some of the what of kind of what's happening and, how reuse might fit into the current landscape of materials management in Ann Arbor. We're now going to go to one of our other partners who is local here, the University of Michigan, the Center for Sustainable Systems. We are working with them on a life cycle assessment. And so what Christian here will share with you in this video is what he and his colleagues and collaborators have learned from an initial assessment that was done on the HUR3 returnables program to date, and it's being further used to test system design opportunities and scenarios in further system exploration. So without further ado, here is Christian. Autumn, I'm not able to hear him. You might need to reshare with sound.
Sorry about that. Let's try. All right, let me know if you can hear it this time.
All right.
This is Christian, and today I'm going to be explaining some of the research that on reusable containers that my colleagues and I have been working on at the Center for Sustainable Systems. So in our research, we developed a parametric Excel-based model to assess the environmental impacts of reusable containers compared to those of single-use system. In this model, we utilized life cycle assessment, where we looked at multiple impact categories across the entire lifespan of a product, which you can see here in the process flow diagram, where we account for impacts from the materials production all the way to the end of life. When comparing reusable and single-use containers, we do so on the basis of an equivalent unit of function that they provide over their lifespan. Using this functional unit approach accounts for the fact that reusable containers are used many more times than single-use containers. The novel aspect of this model compared to the current body of work in the field is the model's parametric nature. This is a method of model development where it is easy to adjust many parameters within the system in order to conduct a robust sensitivity and scenario analysis. In this way, we can begin to understand what parameters the system is most sensitive to and to what we should be focusing on during the design of a system to ensure environmental benefits. Here we analyzed the current reusable system in Ann Arbor and the incumbent single-use containers that it would replace. What we found is that under our base case assumptions, the reusable system was environmentally preferable for each metric over 20 lifetime uses when compared to PLA and bagasse single-use containers. Specifically for this category shown in the graph, which is global warming potential or greenhouse gas emissions, the break-even point or number of uses for the reusable to become preferable was achieved in 4 to 6 uses. This is important because while theoretically reusable containers could be used much more than 20 times, there is some concern over the return rate of containers for a reuse system, which could cut the lifetime of reusable containers short. From our sensitivity and scenario analysis, we found that the system is most sensitive to customer behavior among the measured parameters. Generally, we assume that the container is returned only when another meal is being purchased. Therefore, the impact from transportation is allocated to the meal as opposed to the container. Here in this mechanism, we envision the scenario where a dedicated trip is made to return the container by a portion of customers. From the results, you can see that dedicated trips performed by only a small percentage of customers can reverse the environmental benefits of reusable containers. We also looked at the scenario where a customer washes the container before returning it, which results in multiple washes as the restaurant still must wash the container. While this didn't have as significant of an impact on the system, high levels of excess washing can swing the results in favor of single use in many metrics. So here are some of the big takeaways from our research that can be considered when designing a system for Ann Arbor. For reusable systems, system design and operation will be key to ensure environmental benefits compared to a single-use system. We should be focusing our efforts on customer outreach and design strategies which encourage best practices from the public. But with all this in consideration, though, reuse still shows promise for replacing a single-use system. And now to some of the work that we're currently doing to expand this model. It's important to be able to assess the differences in many systems. So we hope to add more container, material, and dishware options. We also are working to include the assessment of a centralized washing system, which would serve to make a reusable system more accessible to restaurants without washing facilities. And with this model, we have also begun to work with Perpetual to apply this model to Galveston, Texas, in order to inform decision-making when designing a citywide reusable system. And so here I'd just like to acknowledge some of my colleagues on this research and Morgan Stanley for funding this project. Thank you.
Hey, I know Christian is not live with us, but we're all pretty familiar with the research. So if anyone does have a question, we can do our best to answer it. And if not, then that's fine too. I know that's a slightly more technical angle on some of this, but I think it's important to, share just the level of research and data analysis that's going into thinking about what a system could look like and, how to make sure that a system would be designed from the very beginning to be better than single-use disposables. All right, I'm not seeing any questions pop up, so I'm assuming that that was clear. We have 5 last questions for you. So this is the last 5 questions we're going to be asking you for this evening. But we do have a bit more to share after these 5 questions. So don't bail on us after you're done with the questions, but you should see 5 remaining questions pop up on your screen, and there will be a little bit more after this. So jump in on those questions. Again, I will not be humming for you, but hopefully these questions are pretty easy now that you've gone through this whole process. Looks like we've got a lot of answers. There's a few more of you finishing up, so thank you for that. We really do appreciate your input on this. It's really important to know what's going to work or not work. for people in the community. And that's just really important for the design process. So thank you for being here tonight and for taking this time. So we'll looks like we're waiting for 1 or 2 more people to close out their questions. And then we will take a few minutes. All right, I see a question in the chat. So I'll answer this question while we let the last few people finish up their responses. I mentioned this at the beginning and always happy to answer the question. So Perpetual is a nonprofit organization that specializes in partnering with cities and communities to design and implement reusable foodware systems. So the Perpetual team has technical expertise, hands-on experience managing these kinds of systems in other places, but we are not ourselves proposing to run this system. So the way that it would work is that Perpetual facilitates a process to design the system, working with the city. They're leading this effort. So Perpetual is here, as a supporting player to help facilitate a process of design. There's also other partners involved that are playing a big role, zerowaste.org and Recycle Ann Arbor, 2 very important local nonprofits. So we collectively go through this process, which then, if all goes well and the community is supportive and everything works, then it results in the establishment of a reuse system in the community. But Perpetual's role is as a providing technical assistance throughout the process. So with that said, it looks like we are pretty close to complete on the final set of questions. So if you're lingering on your last question, go ahead and close that out. And we do want to take a few minutes here. I know we kind of jumped right in and we shared a lot of data and we asked you a ton of questions. And I can see that some of you are still curious about, well, what is this and where is this coming from? So we want to make sure to take some time now before we let everyone go back to their evenings to answer some of those questions. So I think we can end the poll and move on to the next slide. And I would like to invite Sean from the City of Ann Arbor and Yusuf from zerowaste.org and Alex from Recycle Ann Arbor to share a little bit about the origins of this effort and how we've ended up here today.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. I'll go ahead and kick us off. Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Reynolds. I'm a senior analyst with the City of Ann Arbor's Office of Sustainability and Innovations. For those who may not be familiar, we do have our A20 carbon neutrality plan, which aims to get to community-wide carbon neutrality by the year 2030. So we have a lot of different strategies to get there. And one of those strategies, strategy 5 in the plan, if you take a look at the plan, is to change the way that we use, reuse, and dispose of materials, which in a shortened version is the circular economy. So we are working to get a circular economy up and going, along with our public works department here in the city government. And one of the things that we want to do in order to get to that circular economy goal is to create some sort of reuse system. And this started a couple of years ago, actually, with some conversations with some of our local restaurants who were interested in doing the same thing. And so we banded together, got a bunch of containers, brought on a few restaurants to be a part of the A2R3 or Ann Arbor Reduce, Reuse, Return returnable container system. And got that up and going. I went for a couple of years and then we were like, we want to expand this. We want to make it bigger. We want to make a citywide reuse system. And that is around where zerowaste.org hopped on. So Yusuf, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Sean, and thank you all for coming today. This is very exciting. So yeah, my name is Yusuf. I'm with zerowaste.org. I am also a local restaurateur, and Sean mentioned some of the early on some restaurants were brought on board. My family's restaurant El Harissa was one of the handful that kind of piloted this program. So it may surprise you to learn that these returnable containers have been in use. Granted, it's still quite small, but in use for a couple years now in Ann Arbor. We're still using them at El Harissa, and there's a handful of other businesses. This is really just kind of like a proof of concept, and there's, of course, as you can tell, so much more work to do to make this like a citywide initiative. But We learned a lot over the past couple of years. As this slide, there's like a meandering path. Like we learned that there's so many factors to consider. And for a long time, we were meeting every week, every other week or so, and just brainstorming, bouncing around ideas, trying to design this from the ground up, and found that, yeah, we needed some help. And now it's exciting. We have this whole cohort of organizations and people with expertise, and this is becoming a reality. And we're very excited, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Yusuf. Yeah, you can see the meandering path makes its way through Perpetual. I've already introduced us a few times, so I don't think I need to say any more about the role that we're playing. And our fourth collaborator here is Recycle Ann Arbor. So I believe we have Alex with us from Recycle Ann Arbor. Assuming people know who you are, but maybe just say a few words, Alex, if you would, about Recycle Ann Arbor's commitment to all things circular economy, and yeah, your support for this program.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. We're super excited to be part of this amazing team and together with the city. So yeah, I think a lot of people are probably familiar with RAA. We've been working in the city for over 40 years on recycling, and while I hope everyone's recycling as much as possible, we also know that recycling alone won't ever get us to zero waste, and that reuse is really a critical strategy. So we have a lot of community-based infrastructure investments in recycling that we operate, including the new MRF that was opened in December of 2021, collection fleet of vehicles, drop-off station where I hope all of those, you can go to our website and see all of the different materials that we accept at those locations. We also have a recovery yard where construction and demolition waste can be dropped off, and as much as possible recycle some of that material. And then we have, the most exciting thing I think is we purchased the land where the recovery yard is located. So we have a 20-acre eco site that we're really looking to leverage all of these community investments to really demonstrate alternative solutions like reuse that stop waste at the source. And so I think, that's the most important thing we can do. So we're really looking forward and appreciate everyone's input here. It's so critical in being able to develop a system that works for everyone. So thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Well, I know you've heard a lot from me on this webinar so far, but you can see there's a lot of people working on this effort together, and a lot of great organizations supporting this process and trying to figure out how to really support Ann Arbor in achieving zero waste and a net zero economy. So that is all we have for you this evening. I think we're ending right on time. Letting you know that you'll receive a follow-up email. So we'll share with you some of the results from this. You'll get to see how this worked out, and we'll layer it on top of our in-person workshops. And we'll give you opportunities to opt in to further engagement in this process. So if you'd like to stay tuned and follow the process as it emerges and evolves, happy to have you join us on the journey. And we'll make sure that you get links to all of the different organizations that are involved, so you can learn more about everything that's underway, sort of this and similar projects. So really grateful that you took an hour of your evening to spend with us tonight. I hope you feel like you learned something. I know we learned a lot from you. And maybe before you click out, if you have any additional comments or just want to say, feel free to throw a comment in the chat. Yeah, we're just grateful for your time and your participation. Thank you so much.